Hi everyone. My name is Jim Zhao. So I'm your moderator for this event. So I know there are still people coming in, but in this case, I think we should get started. Let me first thank MIT CEO team. Here we can see like Jimin, Zhu Liang, and Qianran, Catherine, for hosting this particular discussion on an important topic on renewable energy and carbon neutral tech investment. So we hope this panel will bring to our audience 3 points of value. One is update on the recent and ongoing activities on the startup investment, renewable energy, and carbon neutral tech. Second, some insights on the cooperator we see and their strategy and their role on the momentum of carbon neutral tech and renewable energy. And third, and hope we can discuss some trend and future business opportunities. Okay. A little bit about myself. So my name is Jim Zhao. So I was a postdoc and research scientist in MIT Department of Materials. I was working on the battery R&D, and I just left MIT and preparing a new my startup, and also I'm very interested by angel investment. So also I served as the co-president of MIT CEO for 2 years and just left the position, but I'm now still active with those guys you see on the screen with the MICO background. So we are MICO Energy Community team. Okay, so before we get panel discussion started, I would like to ask Dr. Zhu Liang to give us a little bit introduction about MIT CEO and MIT CEO Energy Community. Please, Zhu.
Sure. Let me share my screen. Can everybody see my screen? Hello, can everybody see my screen?
Yeah, it's okay. Good.
So I'm gonna, before the event starts, I will have a little introduction to MIT CEO. So MIT CEO, or MIT Chinese Entrepreneurs Organization, is an MIT student organization founded by MIT students and alumni, as well as students from other schools, young entrepreneurs and professionals in Boston area. MIT CEO has launched over 60 events in 2020 and involving 5,000 participants. So most events took the form of fireside chat, entrepreneur lecture. The cover topics include healthcare and biotech, artificial intelligence and blockchain, and energy and fintech, and investment in general. So our mission is to connect entrepreneurs with investors and help them build world-class companies and maintain collaboration with tech corporations all around the world. And so far, we have attracted 180 funders into the community, and more than 10K subscribers to our newsletter, and this number is still increasing. During the pandemic, we've moved all our events online. The Zoom events is one of our most popular event series, where we invite industry leaders to discuss the recent trend in each sector and suggest opportunities in entrepreneurship and investment. Specifically, the Zoom events hosted by MIT CEO Energy Community focus on energy industry and covering topics like climate change, clean energy, electric vehicle, battery, and carbon neutrality, and etc. This slide shows that we have 6 members currently in the community and energy community. And today it's such an honor for us to host this panel discussion on carbon neutrality and investment opportunities. At last, for this event, we would like to inform audience that the views, thoughts, and opinions expressed in this panel belong solely to the speaker, and not necessarily to the employer or any other organization, group, or individual. The discussion is for informational purposes only. You should not construe any such information as legal, tax, investment, financial, or other advice. Okay, so I'll hand the microphone back to G.
Thank you, Zhu. Oh yes, now we got people coming in more. So yes, that's about MIT CEO and this energy community. And so come back to this panel today. We are very glad to have our three very distinguished guests, and Dr. Sun, and Tony, and Dr. Ma Xin, and Dr. Xu Haibin. Sorry, I just I need to revise my yes. This is a very special event. So we got this big panel. We got 220 people registered, and we also got tens of questions from our attendees. And so today we're gonna try to cover, let's say, we use about 50 minutes for this panel discussion to discuss, to ask some questions resolved by our from the registration, but also from our preparation. And then we'll leave more than 30 minutes Q&A session to ask all the attendees to discuss with our panelists. So feel free to raise up your hand or you ask question in the chat box. So our team, Drew, Catherine, and Jimmy, they will help me to get the questions to make sure that we will cover those. Okay, all right. Then let's get started. So start from the first question. I would like to ask Dr. Xin first. So Xin, I see the fund name is Total Carbon Neutrality Ventures. This is like exactly the topic we're gonna discuss today. So I guess it is perfect to start this discussion from you. Firstly, can you introduce a little bit about yourself and your background?
Thank you very much. It's such a great pleasure to be here. Yeah, indeed, name tells a lot of things and people put a lot of meanings in names. So just for information, you know, Total is in the process of changing its name from Total to Total Energies. And there's a lot of consideration thinking behind that. And I'm the managing director for the Asian platform of Total Carbon Neutrality Venture. So we are the corporate venture arm of the Total Group. And we invest globally in startup from A and B round beyond in the field of energy, mobility, and circular economy and sustainability. And we have a team in the US, and the rest of the team are based in Europe and covering the rest of the world, including Europe, in Asia, and Africa, and the rest of the world. So we do small ticket investment. We have around 40 startups and also about 10 venture capital funds. And I really started my career in the oil and gas industry. And now what I'm investing, I'm happy to share later on, is really very much going beyond petroleum and oil and gas. So we are really scouting the smart energy, and new energy, as well as mobility services, EV charging, hydrogen, biofuel, and CO2. And so it's a big range of things as an important part of the solutions for energy and for climate challenge. So it's a great pleasure to be here. Very honored to be in the same panel with Dr. Xu and Dr. Sun. I look forward to exchanging more.
Thank you, Xin. Okay, so I would like to hi, Dr. Haibin, to say hi to you. So we're glad to have you here. Can you introduce about yourself and your background as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you, Jim. First of all, for inviting me to this panel. I'm really, really happy. Yeah, MIT is not a place that I'm not familiar. You know, I used to spend 1 week out of every month for 2 years. Even have an office in MIT in the E19 building. So it's really great to talk to people. And in the energy community, you know, there are quite a few, Wendy Duan and CJ as well. My office used to be very close to Bob Armstrong, you know, the MIT Energy Initiative. So yeah, currently I lead a team in Shell called Shell Research Alliance and GameChanger. I have a team members in Houston and Rio de Janeiro in Brazil. So I lead those 2 teams. Our accountability are investment into universities and national labs for research collaboration. So I'm responsible for that for US and Canada. At the same time, Shell GameChanger is our early stage investment vehicle. So investing into startups covering really a whole range of themes, both in renewables and electricity, but also in the traditional upstream and downstream technologies. So I do that for the US, Canada, and also Brazil. I'll just mention lastly, as an introduction, that also about 2.5 years ago, I started a program called GCXN, and that's a Shell GameChanger accelerator powered by NREL. And for those who are not familiar with NREL, that's a DOE national lab based in Colorado, in Golden, Colorado. And it's really a phenomenal set of expertise and people there, about 3,000 people, $500 million per year budget, purely focused on renewables energy. So we have a startup incubator with them 2 years ago, and now we have a really phenomenal set of startups in the portfolio, 14 startups now, and we'll have another cohort this year later. So I just pause there, yeah, as the intro.
Thank you, Haibin. Very cool. Yeah, I guess people may have more questions about that, but let's take that later.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, yeah. Okay, Tony, hi. So how are you?
Hi, Jim, how are you?
Good, thanks. So by the way, thank you for helping us organize this. I know you are from PTT Global Chemical, and that is actually the second largest company in Thailand. Correct me if I'm wrong. So with tens of billions of sales every year, and you are serving as the GC Venture America's CVC manager, and GC America, right? So could you introduce about yourself a little bit more about the background as well? Yes.
Sure. Yeah. Thank you very much for having me, and really glad to be here with distinguished panelists like Xin and Haibin. I think unlike Total or Shell, which are kind of like house-known names, I think PTTGC is relatively much smaller player. So I think I'm gonna spend a minute talking about what we as a corporate, and then I will move to myself and the fund that we're doing. So basically, PTTGC, so basically PTT Global Chemical, we are the refinery arm of the National Oil and Gas Company of Thailand. So the ultimate parent company is called PTT Group. So very much like Total or Shell, and they are PTT Group is an energy conglomerate in Thailand, biggest company over there. Revenue-wise, kind of like 50-60 billion every year. So we are the biggest, one of the biggest player in Southeast Asia. And within the PTT Group, we have a GC, we are the refinery, basically the downstream. So we basically, our feedstock is crude oil, natural gas, and then we make plastic, to make it simple. So we make chemicals. So compared with Total or Shell, we are living, our fund, we are basically the corporate venture of a refinery company. So that's kind of how we look at things, maybe slightly different from Shell or Xin or Haibin. So for GC itself, so basically a petrochemical company, refinery company, revenue-wise, I think we are kind of 10 billion-ish last year. Definitely hit by COVID a lot. I think our 2019 revenue is like 15 billion-ish or 14 billion-ish US dollar. And we are the biggest polyolefin maker in Southeast Asia. I think for us, we established the VC or venture arm here in Boston area about 4 years ago, 2017. So we definitely aspire to become an active player in what we are in our industry, just like Total and Shell. So since founded, so I joined the firm when the team was founded. So for now, we have 2 offices. So one office in Boston, we have 4 people here, and another 2 or 3 colleagues in Bangkok. So our Boston office, we oversee things in North America and part of Europe, and our Bangkok folks, they oversee things in Asia as well as the other half of Europe. So regarding investment area, so we have 4 focus areas: advanced material, biotech, life science, clean tech, clean energy, as well as industry digital. And we, transaction-wise, I would say a typical series A or B, kind of where the company already have the technology demonstrated, but needs capital to grow, to expand and scale up. This is where we can bring our value in and help the company to grow and expand in the area where we operate. So yeah, I think for me, I'm material science type of training. So I graduated from Peking University with a bachelor degree in physics, and then did my PhD here in Boston area, and then spent a few years in a consulting firm helping multinational corporations like Shell or Total identify investment target, and then started with to help GC since 4 or 5 years ago.
Very cool. Yeah, thank you, Tony. That's a very good introduction. So as you can see that our panelists are all can cover the global view from Asia to North America, South America, and people from both America and Asia. Great. So the second question I'd like to ask you guys is about this topic, so net zero emissions, global pledge, and so what's the role you think as your venture play in this to meet the net zero emission global pledge? And also, so I guess as a VC, they really want to invest to startups. So, but to compare with financial VC, what's the difference as corporate VC do, and what's extra benefit will a startup get if it enters into portfolio? Just throw these questions to Xin first. Maybe can you start? Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a critical question, and there's an increasing consensus from all the parties, including government, corporates, and general public about the getting to net zero by 2050. And with that, energy companies play a critical role because indirectly, it's accounting for probably 80% of the greenhouse gas emission. And this, I think, is the context where the companies are heading to. And now there is a massive kind of energy transition going on, and as part of to have a better energy solution as well as addressing the climate challenge. So with this, it's very complicated and very kind of providing more opportunities compared to previous energy transitions. When we see energy transition in the past, we see from wood to coal, and then from coal to oil and gas. It's kind of singular, and it's driven by a different kind of industrial revolution in the past. But this time, it just the scale is much more massive, and it has to be all parties participating, and that's where there are the solutions will not be one solution, will not be one type of energy, but a package of energy, package of technology and solutions. So with that means that the corporates like Dr. Xu's Shell and us cannot operating in a closed circle, and it has to have an open channel constantly from inside to outside, and constantly to see what's happening outside and bring them inside and proposing the right solution and the right cost to addressing this massive challenge. So that's where we think that corporate venture can play a very important role in a sense. It can be in the game in a relatively modest ticket, and very flexible and capable of scouting a wide range of solutions and technology, and providing very important optionality to the group, and bring really what is happening outside to the inside, and also to using what is inside to helping for example, to make sure that the solution outside can fit in the existing system in a very relatively reasonable cost. So that's where we think, instead of having M&A, you have to have a big ticket of hundreds of millions of dollars. It's very important for corporate venture to invest, for example, our case is 1 to 5 million in different startup and different wide range of startup. We can at the same time investing in a competitive different technology. For example, can invest at the same time battery swap and EV charging. And those are extremely important to really addressing this and capable of bringing a portfolio of solution in the future.
Of course. Yeah, that's good answer. So for Tony and Haibin, you guys want to echo about this?
Yeah, I just quickly add a couple points. So in this space of energy, it's an extremely complex and huge system, right? So to transition the system into either low carbon or net zero is frankly a daunting challenge, and no one can do it alone. And CVC really play an extremely important role there, together with startups, together with corporations, together with banks, with governments, with NGOs, and even with society, with consumer behavior, all of us as well, how we choose to consume energy and how we view energy. So it's an extremely complex system. The role I see CVCs play is really to help startups to think about the problem, to identify and define the problem, that's one, but also to reach the market, right? So for example, in Shell, we are operating in somewhere around maybe 70 different countries, different markets, and we have 45,000 retail stations, meaning gas stations all around the globe. So, if you have a piece of technology for EV charging, we can multiply that really, really quickly by installing that in our retail stations. So that's the market reach that a company like Shell can really provide, same as other companies. So that's, in my program, in GameChanger and also in G6N, it's really our focus to provide a bridge between a startup which may have really great technologies, but does not necessarily understand each sector or each market, each country, the conditions to help them to reach, to find the right solutions for the local market or for the sector. And that is quite different from a financial VC. The other aspect I would say is just the time horizon. Yeah, for energy, similar as hard tech, any hard tech is very different from, say, consumer software or digital solutions. It just takes a lot longer and need patient capital to support it. And that's, depend on which firm you're looking at, it's not always available. But we have the luxury to really help in that space as well.
Cool, that's really very important. Yes, definitely. Tony.
Yeah, I think Haibin and Xin pretty much said everything I wanted to say. I think the only other thing I probably want to highlight is more on the operation side. Like typically for CVC function or CVC teams like us, investment is just one of our purposes, and we definitely want to drive the strategic synergy back to the company and also help startup leveraging those resources. So I would say for me, I pretty much spend probably 70 to 80% of my time on investment related topics, but also I'm kind of an active tech scout for the rest, like the 30% of the time, helping my mothership, the corporate, to identify the new technologies emerging technologies that can address our problem, but also do the bridging, make introductions between the startups and our business unit to try to help them. So I think this is kind of on the operations side, that's kind of something that we definitely add value to both sides of the world.
Yeah, that's correct. That's absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, so maybe if I, just what Tony said really stimulate another idea, I just want to add quickly as well. One thing we do quite a bit in Shell GameChanger is portfolio management of the startups. So there's actually a delicate balance. On one hand, I spend a lot of time with the startups, visiting them, making introductions for them into the Shell New Energies business. If there's a commercial partnership or additional investment opportunity to be had, I like to make that happen. At the same time, the balance I try to strike as well is to always remind the startups that they have their own identity. Shell may not be their only customer, and Shell may not even be their customer at all, right? Then that is totally fine. I just want to remind them that they should really look at their self-interest and how they can impact the energy transition from their angle rather than think about Shell. Because if they only think about Shell as a customer, then that can really stifle innovation. And I think that's a balance CVCs always have to balance. We are an investor, but we are not an owner, right? We have a minority investment. So the startup really needs to maintain their own identity.
Yeah, I really like your answer, Haibin, because from a small startup point of view, they will feel like, okay, to cooperate with a giant company will be dangerous to us. They may eat us someday, or I have to, get into it completely in some way. But I really like your answer. Maybe you can your answer to to clear that point.
Yeah, I also would like to echo what has been mentioned is like we're minority share owners, so we definitely want the company to be successful. And actually, when we make investment, one of the criteria we see is we need a strong syndicate with other strategic investors. You know, even our competitor is okay as long as we can help the company to grow, whether we contribute to the conversation from different part of the supply chain or anything. So we actually open to. I think, you know, on the corporate level, probably there are competitions, but I think on the CVC teams, we tend to be more collaborative than the mothership.
Yes.
Yeah, and sometimes, you know, it's kind of funny between the technology experts, startups and Shell experts. Sometimes, you know, they just have a lot of passion and they talk quite a bit in depth. And I always have to go in and say, startup, don't tell too much to Shell, right? If you have differentiated technology, you have your confidential, you know, your secret sauce, keep it to yourself. Don't share with us, right? There's a natural tendency for experts to share a lot in depth, but we really want you to keep your identity.
Okay, that's really cool. Okay, so talking about this, the relationship with startups, there's a question. So how do you select an investment target? Okay, and what does your decision-making process look like? The startup, if they want to, you know, go into your portfolio, they will be interested about this. And is that different as a financial VC? But I think Tony mentioned a little bit about the synergy part, but I would like you guys to talk a little bit, particularly in this net zero tech investment and the renewable part in this field. Xin, can you start from?
Yeah, sure. For us, I think it's pretty clear. That's also differentiated from the financial VC. Because financial VC, there's probably the return that's the most important criteria. For us, there are three criteria. First one is financial return. It has to be a good investment. And the second one is strategic relevance. So we have to justify why is this relevant to us. Is this short-term relevance, middle-term relevance, and long-term relevance? And what are the scale of it? Like marginal innovation of enhance our existing operations, or it's like strategically helping us to coping with a disruptive future. And the last and the third criteria, which is very important these days, is a CO2 and the circular economy scope. So this has to be important and it has to be significant. So basically, I agree with Dr. Xu and Dr. Sun. Like we spend a lot of time scouting companies and do the technology scouting. And actually, compare with my previous life when I was in M&A, I think the scouting take much of my time. Like our ratio is around like 1 to 2% of the investment. Basically, 100 company we talked to, spoke to, did some light due diligence. So probably 1 or 2 we're going to invest in the end. So that is really where the judgment and really at the end, because we operate in an uncertain environment, at the end, there are still a lot of uncertainties, technology, market, the team, and the company is having a lot of potentials to grow. So there you need a jump of faith. And myself, I always kind of asking myself before I proposing, do I really think this company is really the company that we need to propose to for investment? Am I ready to put my own pension in the funds, you know, in the company? Sometimes I do that test with myself. So that's where, you know, we systematically to ask, and also to check with a lot of people within the company to see, you know, how do they see the solution can be fitting in the company in the future. Although we don't look for that, we are not a pre-M&A kind of activity. We don't look for own the company and buy the company in the end.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that's really good. So Haibin and Tony, you guys want to echo about this?
Yeah, I'll mention you know, the criteria that we use to select companies for GameChanger. We screen somewhere around 700 to 1,000 startups a year globally. So it's quite a lot. And then we make a few dozen investments a year. And yeah, as a seed stage, you know, our investment value is lower than the typical, say, our sister team Shell Ventures, but we invest a lot more So the criteria we have been using for basically the last 24 years, and that's how long the history we have in Shell GameChanger now, is pretty much stay the same. It's these 4 criteria. The first one is novelty. At the early stage, we really want the company to have something that is differentiating in either technology or business model or how they use and approach the market. So that's novelty. Second one is around the size of the prize. Yeah, so if we see a company that have a high chance of success, but if the final market value for their target is small, then we're not very interested compared to, say, a company may have a lower chance of success, but in case of success, they have a huge market value. So that's number 2. And number 3 is a credible path of, the technical de-risking and commercial de-risking. And that involves, just how strong the team is essentially, and how they're thinking around a commercial strategy, right? So for example, can we see a true passion in the founder? Sometimes, we get approached by, say, especially in energy, there may be extremely outstanding and experts starting a company. And what I always like to see, just personally, is that, is the founder able to attract, inspire another person to join him or her in the team, say sacrificing maybe a well-paying job to join the vision essentially. So is there a credible team there? So that's number 3. And finally, it is the strategic relevance, as Shane also said as well. There may be many companies doing all kinds of innovative solutions, but if it's not related to, say, energy as a maybe a basic bottom line, then we'll not be interested, right? So that's essentially how the criteria we use, both in our own selection. We have a lot of companies knocking on our doors, and we use those criteria. And also, we have a lot of strategic partnerships with, say, incubators in universities or national labs. That's one advantage we have with Shell Research Alliance. We work a lot, for example, with the Cyclotron Road in Berkeley, with some of the incubators in MIT, with National Renewable Energy Lab. So we all use a similar approach of those 4 criteria to select the startups for our portfolio.
Yeah. Okay. That's good package of that. So how about Tony?
Yeah, I think for us, first, we are the VC function of a big corporate. So financially, it needs to be an investable company, right? So basically, like what Haibin just mentioned, the team, the technology, the market, these definitely needs to make sense. And in addition, I think for us, we are more. If you think about the corporate VC, there's someone more on the financial side, someone on the strategic side. I think for us, we are more on the strategic side. So basically, for every deal, before we go to our invest committee, we need to get endorsement from our business unit. So I'm not talking about on a high level, this is advanced material deal or this is a clean tech deal. We actually need to have some ideas on the business case level. So we don't have to, the potential startup and our business unit doesn't have to, form some contract, this or that. But before we go to our invest committee, we need to have some ideas in our mind. When this becomes our portfolio, what kind of conversation we will take and what kind of business case we will build together with our business unit. So this is something that quite challenging, because as a big corporate, what we actually need and how people see the emerging technology. And from the startup side, they have brand new technology, but then what is the in terms of the scale, the stage, and how to enter the corporate. So there's a big mismatch, and it's our job to find the tipping point, try to connect them together to make a case.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. That's very cool. Yeah. Okay. I got some question about, actually this is not relevant about the content, but some people couldn't join in this due to some setting. As I apologize, because we use a new Zoom account this time because we got more than 200 registered. So I think our old Zoom state couldn't have enough capacity, but maybe our setting is something wrong. So if you guys, I see some guys can click in and join by clicking the link we shared through email, but some people couldn't join in through the Eventbrite. So if you couldn't, could you, I'm sorry, how to say that? Could you share with your friends who want to join in that to click the link from the email we sent out, or share in the groups we shared? But maybe Eventbrite that's setting something wrong. That's sorry about that. Okay, so I think that pretty much talk about a lot about the criteria and your strategy, things about that. But there is one question about a global view, like because net zero emissions, all countries want to achieve. But however, there's a different situation in developing countries and developed countries. So what would you say about the challenges for developing countries and developed countries? I know you guys are like in the CVC, it's corporate, it's not a country, but still, I think you meet a lot of startups and run different, run business in different countries. Would you see some differences? And particularly, do you think like what the chance for developing countries? I know so developed countries maybe is easier because the funding, because the technology. But how about the developing countries? Xin, can you share something?
Yes, yeah. Indeed, I see this kind of there's a gap between developing countries and developed countries. Like 4 years ago, when I created this Asian platform, that was where most of the focus of venture investment were still on the US and Europe. And that time I remember when I was like proposing this project of setting up the Asian parts in the VC to our investment committee, I have to really take time to explain that it's not only a copy from the world to Asia. There is genuine, real innovation in Asia that is happening, and there's a big, there's entrepreneur. A lot of them have excellent education and experience overseas. They're coming back to China, to India, and Southeast Asia. And there's a huge market that the consumers are just so kind of open to the new concepts and ideas. And there's a very good value chain already there. And it's much easier to have some, from design to product. The life is just quite short over there. So, and there's a huge finance in China. There's government funding available at a very privileged cost. So I think now I really don't have to tell that to people, and then it's very clear there are genuine and very important innovation is happening in Asia, and it's important actually for the sector that we're working in, because there's 60% population and more than 50% of the CO2 is there. And when we talk about plastic in the ocean, the plastic coming in the ocean from the river in Asia is the same as the plastic in the ocean from the European rivers. Sure. So that's where I think indeed we see that Asian probably somewhere still need to kind of catching up in terms of we said like hardcore technology, material science, and all this. But to a large extent, we see that the business model side and the R&D, the development part side is very strong. And also what we see is there's a very good kind of advantages. For example, when we talk about US, when Chicago was becoming a city and urbanized, the oil price was ridiculously low. So everything was setting around that. Well, these days when China, India, then urbanize, industrializing, and they have all this in their mind about climate challenge, about higher cost. So I think the business model kind of like leapfrog advantage. They can really taking a more efficient and probably a better view and take into consideration when they build cities, communities, education systems. So we see that there is really like a advantage and disadvantage. And after all, I think, when we talk about climate energy, it's really a global issue. Everybody has to come up and take into consideration of the different kind of local resources and technologies coming up with the right solution.
Yeah, sure. Yeah, so how about Haibin? I think you also lead team in Brazil. What do you see the US and Canada and Brazil?
Yeah, so I talk a little bit about this. I think, energy transition, in my view, it is not only a moral imperative, it's also economics imperative. Yeah, so
sure.
Yeah, I still recall a lot of conversation when I was working a lot with MIT, especially, I don't know if some of you know the Tata Center for Technology and Design, and Rob Stoner is leading that. We had a lot of conversation about those, and one of the comments he made really struck with me for all those years, and it's a comment actually from Ratna Tata himself. He said, anything when we do in developing countries, we cannot just take something in developed countries and go there and think that, oh, it'll just work, right? We have to go to the local market, learn the local conditions, and then make it work. And that's essentially the philosophy behind the Tata Center as well. All the MIT and Tata fellows, they will go to India or Africa to, learn about the solutions. And the other comments that Rob mentioned was also income generation really is the key, right? If you have technology for energy in a developed country, it needs to lead to income generation for the people, and then it will take ownership, and then it will be sustainable. So we think a lot about those. Shell has a very ambitious goal of providing electricity to 100 million customers who don't currently have electricity access by 2030. So that's a tall order, and we are thinking a lot about those. And the only way I would argue to do this is partnerships with, people on the ground, NGOs, governments, and startups, to do it together. Otherwise, there's no other way around it. So that's basically my thinking in this space. You cannot just cookie cut. It has to be fit for the local market conditions.
Yeah.
Totally agree with what Haibin and Xin said. I think in my case, because I work for oil and gas company in the developing country, so I was able to see this for kind of like in the first hand. So what I'm seeing is the corporate definitely see this. I think so. First for the country, so I'm not talking about company. On the country level, there's definitely the balance between growth of the economy and also how to deal with emission. Because I have to say, at this point of time, these two things, a lot of time they do not align. So how do you pick and choose one on the other? So and also there's also the people are also seeing it with the opportunity of the leapfrog advantage, because with a new scenario, new technology is needed, new innovation is needed, and in order to achieve the global goal of greenhouse gas emission reduction, then the population of lower income countries and developing countries definitely needs to do something. So this is where I think on the company level, PDGC is try to split these two things in separate with different strategy. So for our traditional business, our goal is still to grow, but we have a timeline of doing certain things. So unlike BP or some of the other developed country, I would say oil and gas company, where they already have very clear net zero goals. I think for us, our goal is we use 2012 as our base year, and then by the year of 2030 and also by the year of 2050. So we have different target. Basically, our goal is to reduce the greenhouse emission by 20% at the year of 2030, and then by 50-ish% by the year of 2050. So this is kind of how we adjust that to be a realistic, we can balance on the traditional business. At the same time, we are building new businesses, like through innovation, through partnership. So this is why we are setting up entities like Corporate Venture and also doing M&As in various areas with this in mind. So we, outside our petrol-based business, we also have a very big footprint in the renewable sources, chemical from renewable sources, like bioplastic, biopolymer, where we have quite a few subsidiaries and joint ventures in that field. So this is kind of how we try to balance the old energy, the new energy, the old material, the new material, and how to balance the game of emission reduction and also how to maintain the growth.
Yeah, Yeah, of course. Yeah, I see the differences because I see like from Total and Shell, you both have the net zero plan 2050, right? For both of you. Yeah, and for the developing countries, maybe a little bit later, but we also have our own word on that. I think China like 2060 is a little bit later, but hopefully we can